Good evening and welcome to another NTX live stream. So this is a video that I've been kind of dancing around and going to make for a while, but finally going to make a live stream specifically about blackouts and the truth behind blackouts. So if you look up freediving, if you Google freediving, the number one danger that comes up when researching freediving is blackouts. Obviously there are other dangers involved with freediving. When you're in and around water, there are other dangers, but specifically freediving, the main danger that comes up is the blackout. So I'm going to look into them today and tell some truths and the reality about blackouts. So let's start with number one. What are blackouts? What is a blackout? So when you hold your breath, your oxygen levels go down. So as you metabolize, as you do exercise, your body is burning up oxygen, and if you hold your breath, you can't refresh the oxygen in your body. And at some point, when you're holding your breath, those oxygen levels are going down and down. You can't refresh them because you're not breathing. There comes a point when the oxygen levels in your blood are low enough that the body responds by effectively taking over the body, the function of the body, and breathing for you. And if you're in air, this blackout can last a split second. The body takes over, starts breathing, oxygen's replenished, and quite quickly you recover consciousness. But if you're underwater, chemoreceptors on the face tell the body that you're underwater and you can't breathe. So if you black out underwater, the body doesn't breathe, and there's no self-rescue. If you black out, it's like a faint. You become unconscious, and the next step is death, unless you have a buddy there to rescue you. So this is why they're quite dangerous. If you hold your breath too long, your body takes over and breathes for you. If you're underwater, it won't breathe for you, and that's it. So that's the simple bottom line of what a blackout is. As you approach that level where there's not enough oxygen for the body to continue normally, there are steps that can happen before it. Some of them are symptoms, or they manifest in such things as body shaking, sambas, and uncontrolled movements. But effectively, we're really just looking at the blackouts. So why do they happen? Well, there's two sides to this. The first is, the truth is, you held your breath too long. You've gone too deep, too long. That's it. That's it. Black and white. If you, there's a lot of misinformation out there, especially if you start going on courses which are slightly higher level. They start looking at different parts of physiology and physics, and they start talking about pressure changes in the last section of the dive, causing shallow water blackouts, etc., etc. But all of this is totally irrelevant. The crux of it is you've held your breath, or whoever it is has held their breath too long, gone too deep, held their breath too long. That's it. The physiology and the physics behind it may affect how it happens, but the bottom line is if you've held your breath too long, you black out. That's it. You could possibly tweak that to include you've used up too much energy, oxygen. So if something affects you while you're holding your breath, you use up too much oxygen, and you're going to kind of burn a bit too much oxygen, but essentially you're still held your breath too long. That's it. People sometimes talk about stress or stresses during a dive, but again, the bottom line is for that dive with those amount of stresses, you held your breath too long. That's it. So there's no excuse for a blackout at all. There's never an excuse. There's reasons why you have a blackout. Sometimes these reasons are obvious, and sometimes they're not so obvious. If they're obvious, it's very scary that people quite quickly dismiss a blackout. Oh, I got caught in a net, or I got caught here, or this happened, or that happened. Dismiss it. But that doesn't really help matters. Really concerning, very, very concerning, is when people dismiss a blackout that it had no external reasons out of the ordinary, and it's them. They decided that they would try and do a dive that was too long or too deep, and there's when they dismiss that, oh well, I've actually heard this. I've actually heard people say the first part of the dive was really good, and then when I came up, no, if you decided to dive too deep, the problem happened when you decided. So that was before the dive even started. And trying to dismiss it as, oh, the first bit was right, it only happened later on, is just not helpful at all. Okay, so that's what they are and why they happen. And number 3, why are they so bad? Well, number 1, it can be death. It kills people. People die every year because of blackouts. And we'll talk about the safety and how to kind of negate or try and negate that side of it in a minute. But effectively, the number 1 reason why it's so bad is because you can die from it. Effectively, it's the last ditch attempt of your body to stay alive. It's pushing your body to the very limits of life, not to the very limits of exhaustion or of how strong you are, but literally to the edge of death. Moving on from that, the repercussions of a blackout are really bad. Not only does it make our sport look bad, both professionally or if you're trying to explain to somebody what our sport is and they see a blackout, it's really bad for the sport. Bad image. But personally, it takes years to reset the subconscious brain, the subconscious from a blackout. It takes years. And anybody who underestimates that, anybody who says, oh, it was fine, I got over it, that's not true. Because it's the body taking over and trying to survive, which is 2 things, 2 problems. The first is that the body, if you did survive, thinks that's a good strategy because it works, so it will do it again a lot easier. And you do find people who have had a blackout tends to black out easier again because the body used that strategy to survive. They survived, so the body uses it again. But equally well, there's demons going on in the back of in your subconscious. It's very easy to dismiss it and just, yeah, it's fine, I'm over that. But the demons, when you're in the water again, in that scenario, in that situation, the demons are still there, and it takes years to reset that. But it also takes its toll on the buddies, the person who rescued you, or somebody who has rescued somebody from a blackout. They've seen somebody literally push themselves to the edge of death and then had to rescue them. And if that's a willing action, somebody's chosen to do that, that is really, really hard to overcome psychologically. And so, and I've said it many, many times before, people who dismiss blackouts as part of training, part of the sport, I'm over it, there's got to be alarm bells ringing about their honesty, because it takes a long time to overcome the repercussions of it. Even if there was some situation that somebody set up the dive wrong, or something happened out of your control, the next time you're in that situation, in the back of your mind there's going to be, well, what happens if they set it up wrong again? What happens if that same thing happens again? It takes years to wipe out or to reset. Sam Still, who was teaching for us, once said, and I use it every foundation course I do now, it's a little bit like an airbag in a car. It's amazing at saving lives, but once the airbag's gone off, it's virtually impossible to pack it back down again and have it like new. So once you've had a blackout, it's virtually impossible to repack it. So moving on, number 4, how to avoid blackouts. Now, I have issues with quite a few courses and instructors, because when we talk about blackouts, they have one safety rule, and that's never dive alone. And it's true, you should never dive alone, but that's in case a blackout happens. It's not avoiding blackouts. So there's got to be absolutely 2 safety rules. Yes, never dive alone. If something bad happens, if a blackout happens, somebody else is there. If there's nobody else there and you black out in water, you're dead. If there's somebody else there and you black out in water, there's a good possibility of you surviving. So never dive alone, of course. But surely the safety that we have to be teaching people is how to avoid blackouts. And this comes in no tanks. We use the words never dive beyond your relaxation limits. Not only the relaxation limits set how the brain learns for progression, but equally well, it's very hard to push yourself to blackout if you stay within your relaxation limits. But the essence, the most important thing is awareness, honesty, and lack of ego. The awareness, there is always a reason for a blackout, and there is always signs of a blackout. And so this comes into honesty as well, awareness and honesty. I was at the World Championships once, and I had two athletes at the World Championships. We were watching somebody dive, and we were at the one end of the pool, 25-meter pool, and I saw them do a turn at the other end of the pool, push off, and I went, they're blacking out. They're gonna black out. They've gone too far. That's it, black and white. I could see it. And I was 25 meters away on the surface looking into the water, and I could see it. And I turned my two athletes around and said, you don't need to see this, and walked them away. This person swam and swam and swam, stopped moving, safety divers went down, picked them up, they were fine. After the event, I genuinely heard that person say, yeah, no, it came on, it was just like that, there was no signs. That's, unfortunately, they may have, blanked out the section before, so they might not have been, they might not have been dishonest on purpose. But there were signs, and I spotted them from 25 meters away. That's how obvious they were. So telling people, or trying to talk to yourself, or teaching people that sometimes there's no signs is extremely dangerous and dishonest, because it's, again, brushing it out. Well, I had no idea. There was no signs to it. There were no symptoms. I didn't know. There's no signs or symptoms. It just came on instantly like that. Brush it under the carpet. Well, there was. And you didn't listen to them. Thinking back about it, you might not remember them, but at the time you didn't listen to them. And this comes back to honesty. And how do we sort out the ego problem? How do we sort out the ego problem? Numbers, depth and time. So if you are diving for a depth, you are stepping over that line where the depth is the important part. You're going to ignore the things that you are aware of. We're going to ignore the awareness. So moving from this, number 5, who's to blame for blackouts? Well, of course, number 1 is the person who's doing it because they've dived too far. They've held their breath too long. But let's go a step further. Any instructor or any course that's got a requirement for a depth or time to complete the course, to pass the course, is to blame. Because we're setting up the concept that time or depth make a better freediver, and people are going to strive to hold their breath longer and go deeper, feeding straight into the ego. Well, I want to be good, so I want to pass this course, so I've got to do this depth. Not how do you do the depth, but I've got to do this depth. So any course or any instructor who has time or depth or distance as a requirement is perpetuating the lie that makes a good free dive and a good free diver. And until we can stop that happening, it's natural. It's natural. People want to get numbers and go deeper and longer and stuff. But as instructors, as people who write courses, people who run courses, it's our job to tell people, to show people that time and depth do not make a good freediver. It's how you do it. And if somebody pushed and squeezed and touched that tag and came back to the surface and they get a certificate saying congratulations, you've done well, that is perpetuating a lie, and that is the cause for blackouts. As soon as people think that the time and the depth is the important thing, that's where we get into danger. So it's, as instructors, it is our job, our duty, not only to the sport as a whole, but to the people who are on our courses, to educate them about how to stay safe. Now, if they go off and choose to do a dive and push themselves and go deeper and have an accident, then that's up to them. But if in a course, which we're calling a safe course, how to freedive safely, we've encouraged them to push to go deeper or push to go longer, it's our fault that they go off and hold their breath too long and have accidents. As instructors, it's our fault because we have told them, you do this depth, you do this time, and you get a certificate saying how good a freediver you are. Not you pushed, rip this certificate up, don't you do that again, because that will be telling them how to be safe. That's what we've got to do. So that's the end of the session tonight. Please share this message. Please discuss it. Please put comments. I've had a comment come up. Could be competition nerve and ego blurring the signs. Yeah, ego could be blurring the signs. But and competition nerve, yeah. But it's still a matter of lack of an awareness. You can tell me why it was a lack of awareness, but it's still a lack of awareness. So please, please comment, question me, discuss this, share this video. But until we are honest as a sport, the bad accidents, avoidable accidents will continue to happen, and we can stop it. Okay, thank you very much. It's another live stream finished, and I hopefully see you next Monday. Say comments, etc.